Are they getting the benefits? You say, oh, they should pay a higher percentage because they can afford. Forget about even the percentage. Why should they even pay the same percentage? Why should taxes be based on the percentage? Right now, if it's the same percentage, if you go to the store and you go to the supermarket and you go to the cashier after you bought your food, and the cashier said to you, okay, that'll be 10% of your weekly salary. Is that what they say? They say that you pay your percent? Then everybody would have the same amount, right? Because everyone has 100%. By what right? Why is it that a man who makes $20 million a year should pay 1,000 times as much in taxes as a man who makes $20,000 a year? Why? Well, you could say, if it's to protect his property costs more, but that's not what the government is doing. The government is spending this money on the welfare state. Is the guy who pays 1,000 times as much in taxes getting 1,000 times as much benefits from Medicare? 1,000 times as much from Medicaid? Does he send 1,000 times as many of his children to the public schools? Is he using public housing 1,000 times as much? Of course not. He's probably not using that at all. By what right is he being forced to pay for it? By what right? You should be ashamed of yourself, all of you who voted for this kind of thing. And Obama says, oh, it's only the top 5%. And then he asks the crowd, anybody here in the top 5%? No, well, hardly any, because it's only 5%. What a way to pander to the public. What a way to pander. How can I lose? Only 5% of the people will be against me, and 95% of the people will like it, because they're getting more wealth. By what right? And you people think, oh, it's because they can afford it. Affording is a relative thing. A guy who makes more than $250,000, yeah, he can afford more than a guy who makes $10,000. But a guy who makes $100,000 can afford more than a guy who makes $50,000. A guy who makes $50,000 can afford more than someone who makes $10,000. So once you have admitted the principle, it's how much you can afford from each according to his ability, the Marxist slogan. Well, then you're saying in principle, take from me too. Take from me to give to the person who has nothing, who hasn't worked for anything. That's what you are saying. By what right? We are going to rape only the most beautiful 5% of the women and the most desirable 5% of the men. Oh, that's great. You ordinary-looking women, you have nothing to worry about. Who here is in the top 5%? Oh, not many, but oh yeah, you can raise your hand. Yeah, but you others, you have nothing to worry about. In fact, it's going to be good for you. You're going to be able to get sex now with the top 5%. You couldn't have done that before. And the top 5%, they can afford it. A beautiful woman, she can afford to have sex with someone who's undesirable, who's ugly, who's overweight, who's a drug addict 3 or 4 times a week. She's still going to get sex the other 3 or 4 times a week with people she wants. That's still a lot more than everyone else. They can afford it. Why not? You should be ashamed of yourself. Whatever happened to principles, rights, not about who can afford what? What do you think someone who makes all that money, he just was born with that money? You don't think he worked for it? Oh yeah, the CEOs, the wealthy, they're not part of the working class. They're not a working family. A worker is someone who uses his hands, not someone who thinks. The CEO, he sits in his office. He's not working. He's just thinking. He's just figuring out what the other people have to do. But they're the ones who work. They have the CEOs and the inventors and all, they have to tell those other people what to do or show them or teach them, but they're not really working. The really people who earn the money are the workers, the ones who don't think. By what right? And he says, oh, but we're only going to turn back the way it was in the Clinton era. The people back then, the rich people paid a higher tax rate. And they didn't even ask for the tax cut. Oh yeah, they didn't ask for it. They didn't ask for it. Because, if the rich had asked for the tax cut, well then it would be okay. But since they didn't ask for it, like as if that would make a difference, then they shouldn't deserve it. And now we're going to ask the rich to pay more. Oh yeah, we're not telling the rich to pay more. You know, Obama says we're asking them. What a phony. What a phony. And he wants to turn it back to the way it was at the Clinton time, and it was okay. Oh yeah, it was okay. So, you know, why don't we turn people who, let's take black people and make them work 5 hours a week as slaves. It's better than it was. It's still better than it was in the 1800s. So why should they complain? It's still better. By what right? By what right? And you know, taxing is not the only way the government raises money. There are two ways the government gets money: robbing and stealing. Robbing is when you tax. Stealing is when you spend and pay for it by borrow and then inflate the money supply. And the spending has gone up on all of these presidents, from Woodrow Wilson on up. It went up. Reagan made it go up. Clinton made it go up even more, although he did cut military spending, but he made the welfare state go up. Bush went up even more, and the new guy is going to go up more. He's talking about change. It's more of the same. It's more of the same. More welfare state, more spending. So when you balance the budget, you steal less, but you rob more. It's the same thing. It's robbing and stealing. And then there's one other thing the government does besides robbing and stealing, and that is controlling. That's like saying, you know what? We're only going to rob and steal half of your wealth, but the other half, we're not really going to let you keep that either. What we're going to do is we're going to tell you what you can do with that money. So we're going to tell you, companies, what products you have to make, who you can hire, what salaries, what wages you can pay, and what you're allowed to do with the profits. We're going to control. Oh, but Obama says, no, 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 no. We have been deregulating in the past. The problem has been deregulation. We need more deregulation. Deregulation. Like this housing problem is the deregulation. The housing problem is because the government started these government-sponsored enterprises. They're called GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And they have loaned trillions and trillions of dollars in the home industry. Government created them. Government instructed them to lend money to families that could not afford a regular loan in the free market because they had no money. They couldn't afford a house. The government program said, we will create your entities, and they're off the books. They're off the budget so that they wouldn't show up on the budget. So, but they're still government-sponsored enterprises. And so what happened is they ran amok, and some people in Congress, and actually more Republicans, but they're no good guys, but some Republicans said, no, we have to rein in these government-sponsored enterprises. We have to regulate. No, no, no. So we didn't regulate the government agencies well enough. So now Obama says, we did not regulate the government, so now what we have to do is we have to regulate private citizens. This is the equivocation. He cannot see the difference between limiting government and limiting free people. What a mentality of a tyrant. We couldn't regulate the police, so now we have to regulate free people. Mentality of a tyrant. And that mentality you see all over the place. We're gonna decide what to do. I have a plan. I, Obama, have an economic plan. And to carry out a plan, of course, you need money. If you have a plan, but you don't have the finances for it, there's no way to do the plan. You need money for a plan. So what he's saying is, all you people out there, you have to give me your money. Because now I know how to invest it. I'm going to invest it in this kind of energy, and I'm going to invest it in this kind of schools, and this kind of thing, and this kind. So he's basically saying, all you people out there, forget your plans. Because you are not going to have the money to do it. You're not going to have the freedom to do it. My plan. I have the plan. You can stop thinking. You can stop thinking because I'm going to figure it all out. I am going to get the best minds. Oh, and I know who the best minds are.